This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, and SAE Institute. You're hearing my voice right now mixed through iZotope, Ozone, and Velvet on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Make sure to get my free mixing course at mixmasterbundle.com, and please check out our awesome sponsors using the links in the show notes. And please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel because it's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
So I've created my mixer template in SoundFlow that I have things like drum focus, bass focus, keyboards, strings, synths, whatever, background vocals, lead vocals. Then I have some custom ones. So if I want to create groups of things, if I want to hear, say, the keyboards and the vocals together, I can press that one and only see those on the screen. I can get myself where I'm only bringing those into focus, and then I can go and make a balanced choice between those. And I have to be like zooming around to make that balanced choice. They're just all the faders in front of me, and I can go, okay, let me turn this up, turn that. Okay, cool, that's how it sounds good. And get to that point of hearing those things quickly. Like if I was on an analog board, I'd go, okay, here's the vocals, here's the keyboards, and go, you know, that's the most streamlined way of doing it.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. At iZotope, mixing and mastering just got even smarter. Velvet gives you silky vocals with sibilant slurn de-essing, dynamic tone shaping, and de-click, all in one plugin. And Ozone 11 now includes clarity, upward compression, and AI-powered stem focus to help you master like a pro. Use code ROCK10 for 10% off Ozone or any of iZotope's incredible plugins at iZotope.com. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Collin Dupuis, a Detroit-based multi-Grammy nominated and two-time Grammy-winning mixer, producer, and musician, working with artists like Yves Tumor, Angel Olsen, Lawrence Rothman, Special Interest, Boy and Bear, and many, many others. He also plays drums in his band Zoos of Berlin. In 2024, Collin came to my studio to teach a mixing masterclass that was a ton of fun. We had a full studio of dedicated producers and engineers from near and far. We learned a ton about Collin's sophisticated mixing method, including a better understanding of how a mix template can work in your home studio, and a deep dive into RX from iZotope and how it can also improve your mixes. Collin's also been a guest on the podcast for episodes RSR515, 341, 404. I'll have links to those in the playlist in the show notes, so you can go check those out if you want to after this interview. Please welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, Collin Dupuis. Collin, are you ready to rock, dude?
I'm ready.
It's great to have you here, man. It's always fun to do interviews with you, man.
Thank you.
I feel like we get into so much awesome, just, you know.
The weeds. That's where.
The weeds, yeah.
I mean, that's where art comes from, right? The weeds. Like where it's just like this kind of place where you're not thinking and it just is flowing through you, right?
Yeah. I was commenting. It's really cool, too. Now that we're on video, of course, you know, you've been a guest on the show 3 times. We've done a mixing masterclass here. It was amazing. Super fun.
That was a lot of fun.
Nobody's gotten to see you yet. So now we finally got a video of you in your studio, and it's cool to see it. And I was commenting that like the sort of creative chaos I see going on in space just always makes me excited. It makes me feel like I want to make music, you know?
Yeah, I try to live like that. Like I mean, I've always been kind of a chaotic person, and I wouldn't say I'm the most organized with my stuff because I have a lot of stuff. I mean, I have a full recording studio worth of equipment, half of it in my garage and half it's pretty bonkers how much stuff I have. And so I'm actually moving some of that, and we can get into that, like what all the different things I'm doing. I'm moving some of that over into the studio that I've been working out of, helping getting their couple different studio. They have some multi-room facility. It's quite famous actually in some ways here in Detroit. But I don't know. Do you want to get into that right now, or should we just continue with?
Sure, we can jump into whatever. I mean, we've already covered your backstory. We've talked a lot about stuff, and I'm sure we'll repeat some things that are worth repeating. But tell us, maybe tell us where you are now, and then jump right into, what you're setting up with your new studio.
Well, in my basement, I have where I'm at in this room right here is mostly where I do most of my mixing now. I spent a bunch of time. I built some tune membrane absorbers to deal with the fundamental resonant mode of the width of the room, which is around 50 hertz, and they worked quite well. I was surprised. I had to spend time tuning the depth of them because you have those calculators online to say this, and even if you know what your mass is, you still have to spend time playing with it. And I discovered I had to play with the depth of them, like, for the mass and how it's actually working in the room versus like what is predictable. And that's a new discovery. I kind of knew that in the past from other studios I'd helped design, but I kind of allowed me a chance to, being in my own room, fine tune this understanding of how these things relate and how you can affect the bass resonance and mostly the decay is what you're trying to get, because that's what really causes the phase cancellation in your low end. So you can't really tell what's going on in those important low frequency things because it's decaying longer than it needs to. So the goal is to keep that as short as possible.
Right. In other words, if you're creating something that has a short bass moment
at that mode,
but your room is making it longer, then you don't know what you're creating.
And it also, if you have long notes at that mode, the mode is phase canceling because it's ringing longer. It's phase canceling against those ringing notes. If you're trying to have a long sustained note at 50 hertz around that, whatever note that is on a bass guitar or synth or whatever, if your room is ringing out too long, it's now cutting into that. And actually, depending on what time mode everything is happening at different points, it's canceling in and out. So you get these things where the low end is coming and going depending on how these things are relating to each other in time. And that's why, like, people say, oh, put EQ on or put these different software things. And those are great sweetening devices for tuning the final little bit out of it. But if you have a long decay at some frequency, like, you can't EQ out time. That's not how it works. Like, you're just taking the power response of your sub out. You're just cutting a bunch of energy out of the power response or headroom. Or if you're trying to boost frequencies, you're even lowering the headroom of your sub's ability, by cutting those frequencies. So there's a bunch of things I've learned about these things as I've designed studios and built my own rooms and moved around in lots of different spaces, kind of like, okay, it's a relationship like you've learned with your speakers, like where they're placed in the room to the walls, how the room is treated, all these things. So I spent time down here tuning these quite massively large. This whole wall has, the wall behind me has quite a few where they're tuned at that frequency to that first order, no, it's the second order mode. I don't know. I think it's the first order mode. It might be the second order mode where it's 50 hertz. So yeah, it's around that. That is still pretty powerful. So it's something that I was able to actually do. And when I look at a waterfall plot on Room EQ Wizard, I can see that it's reduced by, instead of being 600 or 900 or 1 second of decay, it's down like at 300 right now. So it's quite good. And then I have broadband general trapping. I have like these gobos and I have stuff on the ceiling. And I spent time just kind of trying to dampen everything down so I can get generally, when I'm hearing what's coming out of speakers is generally flat. I mean, there's no room that's perfect except for really expensive studios. It's really good. It translates. Everyone likes my mixes, and I've been mixing down here for a couple of years now, so can't complain. Right.
Yeah, your mixes sound great. That's one of the things that we had a lot of pleasure doing in the past year too, was I was able to work with you where you did a couple of mixes for a client that I'm producing here, Chris Chamness.
Yeah, those are great songs. A lot of fun. I love stuff like that where it's like a new challenge, different style of music than I normally work on. More rock and roll in some ways, which is cool. Like, just to be like, all right, we're doing this thing where there's all this energy in the mid-range. How do we get all that to work together? Like, I love those kind of challenges.
Yeah, Nothing But the Stars and hold on, let me pull these up here. We did Shadow of the Sun, Reckoning. Well, I think I forget which.
Yeah, Shadow of the Sun has a really long. One of them has a really long title, like Shadow of the Sun, Reckoning, something. Yeah, it's
Nothing But the Stars. So Rockstars, I'll include those two mixes in the playlist too. I'll make sure to do that because they sounded really great, and it was a lot of fun, man. And you did some really cool things in those mixes where you have a real knack for making the drums come to life from what I sent you as the rough mixes and stuff like that. I mean, there's that classic back and forth where like maybe I push a rough mix to a certain point.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I like dove in and mixed harder, I probably could have sent you a better rough
of course.
mix.
Yeah. I mean,
quick one.
Yeah. When you're producing, like I found when I was making records more with another producer like Dan Auerbach or other producers I've worked with that sometimes our rough mixes end up becoming the final mix because he's pushing or someone's driving it to do that.
Right.
But sometimes you're working on a record and you just don't have the time because you only 3 days, you got to cut a whole record and you just don't have the time to sit there and push it that far. You're trying to get it the best you can as long as, because the goal is like the artist wants to walk out being blown away. You want their manager and the label execs and everyone else involved to be like, okay, that's great. And then they can go, we're willing to throw another this much of money and then we can hire this mixer. Like it kind of helps sell it to the next people who are going to pay for the mixing, right? And then they can decide if they want to keep a mix from the tracking session or not, things like that. But
well, when you reference working with Dan, you guys are probably in a studio setting with a great sounding console that you're doing the rough mix on. So it's already like going through a lot of the same tools you would choose to use at the mix, right?
Well, it's more tracking actually. Like it's about like in that studio at Easy Eye, it was more about like not going back on something, going, this is the sound. And like really like if you saw some of the processing we were doing in the analog domain, like I would have on a vocal chain, I'd have sometimes 6 or 7 devices that are shaping the sound of the vocal so that that's the sound of the vocal for the song. And it's like when you pop that track up with no plugins on it, it's like, boom, there's the vocal sound. Or same with drum overhead. Here's the drum overhead with this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing. And me driving this mic preamp this much and like shaping it so that the sound that comes out when you just take the tracks and blend them together, maybe put some low pass, high pass filters on places, maybe boost some mid range, cut some mid range here and there. It's not a guessing game of like, how's this supposed to sound? It's like really, and so that informed my mixing. Like as I got more into mixing, I'm like, oh, if you do it in the tracking side, the mixing's super easy. But if you get stuff that hasn't been tracked that way, but it needs to sound that way, then you have to be willing to just throw all the rules out the window and slap a bunch of stuff on something to see what happens, and then kind of learn that like there's certain things that work really well in certain contexts, and you start to develop this sense of like, so the tracking I did for years, I mean years and years of tracking punk bands and all kinds of stuff, that's kind of what has informed my mixing technique now, that there's kind of no direct right way of doing it, and that you have to be willing to like utilize what's in front of you and maybe try plugging a bunch of things in to see what happens, even if it's super noisy, and not really care whether or not it's perfect, right? I've never subscribed to the perfect thing. I'm more into like that thing that just immediately makes you feel like the feel of the music. Like the moment you hear it, you're like, oh, what's that? Like it makes you sit up in your chair. And that is kind of important to me. And I've always been searching for that. And that's why I listened to the earlier records I made, 20 years ago or so. It's like some of it is really great. And some of it's like, whoa, that's terrible sounding. But I could tell I was trying to find something. I didn't know what I was doing, right, per se. So I tell anyone who's doing this at home to don't be afraid to like try something different. Like you have all these people on YouTube saying, you got to use this mic on vocal and this and that. It's like, no, try your shit worst mic and put that on your vocal and see what that sounds like. Take your best microphone and put that on the worst sounding thing and see what that sounds like. Try using smaller guitar amps instead of these big ones, or try using a really big one in a room and turn it up all the way with 100 watts and see how it compresses the air in the room and see what that does to your microphones, and try different microphones on that and see what that sounds like, right? Like try all these different things, and you start to get a sense of like what starts to happen when you start compressing the air in the room with a bunch of volume. Like, or a big bass amp, like take a full SVT amp and put it in the room and crank it all the way up, even in a basement or whatever, and see what happens to the sound, and start to get a sense of that, and put microphones up and put a couple different microphones at different distances and see how those are sounding. And you'll be surprised that you may think or have expected something to be a certain way. It actually might be different than it's going to be obviously different than what you could expect it to be. And you might discover some interesting, cool, you're like, oh, wow, I know my neighbors aren't going to like me doing it this way, but it always works really well. Like, this have to do this when my family isn't at the house, like that kind of thing. And it makes you search out stuff that's like kind of unusual. It's not like your expensive guitar amps or whatever, or bass amps that are these boutique things. But like, I had this PV amp that was the same PV head that the main guitars of Soundgarden use. That PV amp? It's a tube amp, but it has like this solid state preamp and has all these little switches in the back. It has like all these little dip switches that are tone shaping devices that are built into this amp. And they had like an external box because you could plug in with the parallel port on it and have a foot switcher that would switch those tone things out. So like,
and it was a guitar amp?
Yeah, it's a PV guitar head, and it has a real unique sound to it. And so you can find stuff like that for nothing now, because people are like, what is this thing, right? Like it's part solid state, whatever. It's like, so yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's funny, like sometimes I think about audio gear, studio gear, in the same way that you might hear somebody give advice about trading stocks in a market. They might say like, wait till there's blood in the streets, and then that's when you want to buy your stock. And it's like we've seen things come in and out of vogue as far as gear goes. Like remember there was it the 90s when all the actual keyboard synths were kind of worth nothing for a while?
Yeah, it was like,
or was it the beginning of the plugins maybe?
No, there was a period during the 90s and even the early 2000s where you could buy a Juno 60, right? Or 106, any one of those Junos, or even you could probably buy an MS-20, Korg MS-20 for like, $300 or $400, right?
Right.
Because people are like, oh, the new thing is the digital or the computer or that old analog thing, because the Yamaha Motif was the thing, right, in production world. Like in the 90s, you could get the Motif was the thing that everyone had to have because it had all the memory, and you got a little sequencer in it and all that stuff. So, or the Kurzweil K2000, whatever. Those were the keyboards everyone wanted at that point. So like that analog patchable MS-20 was going for $300 or $400, and now fast forward looking $2,500 now or something for one of those used ones, the vintage ones. And I had friends who were like, stories of people getting ARP 2600s for like $800 or something, and they're like going for like $6,000 now, or whatever the vintage ones are. So it's like,
oh yeah, those are off the hook. And in the 5200, that's another one, the big one.
Yeah, that's the monstrosity.
Rectangle.
Yeah.
And we had one of those at the school at my college at Washington University.
Those things are amazing. Like that's why I've got into modular synths, because it's like that's a non-musical, it's musical yet non-musical kind of super rabbit hole kind of world, which is really fun for those evenings where you're just like, I don't want to work. I'm not tired yet. I'm going to spend 45 minutes patching and see what happens, right?
Dreaming of a career in audio or the entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs where you'll learn on professional-grade gear with industry pros, learning through real projects, not just lectures. Explore studio production, live sound, audio for film, and a whole lot more. Or take the entertainment business program to learn about contracts, promotion, and more. With diploma, associate, and bachelor's programs programs, there's a path for you. Book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. That's what I do. I wait till I've got a little extra time, and I give myself permission in the studio to put on headphones, or if I'm working on something where I just need breaks, or you have to wait for the stupid wheel, doing this video production, I have to do a lot of waiting.
Because you got to render,
produce my export or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll just put on the headphones and go over to the analog synths and mess around with them just to play around. I feel like that's a good way for me to get familiar with all the digital synths too, because there's just too many these days, So it's like even just having it on call where I can flip over, take a break, and just patch surf to see what things sound like.
Oh, there's so much.
There's so much stuff, and I think about it, and I'm like, like native instruments. I mean, I talk about that a lot on the podcast. There's so many cool things there, but I feel like I'm trying to go and just play around with sounds so that I sort of train my brain to remember, like, generally, what did that sound like? Generally, what does this instrument sound like? So I can think to use it when it's time, to do an overdub or whatever.
So you have like something in your head, like when you get trying to look for an idea, or when you're like working and you get inspiration to try to find a sound, you have that Rolodex, like, oh yeah, this one virtual synth has this sound that does this thing. Let's try that, right? And you open it up and you give yourself, a couple minutes of poking with it, and if it sticks, great. You start getting inspiration. Matt, that's the other thing, is walk away from it. Same thing with mixing. I try to tell people, like, if you're rabbit holing something, if you're spending too much time, obviously if you're trying to clean something up and do editing, it takes time. But if you're just trying to find the sound in something, try things out. Don't give it more than a couple minutes per processor. Like, if it's not working, just move on and do something else. Because otherwise you'll be like, I think it'll work. And you'll sit there for an hour, like, just with one sound going, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I just wasted 40 minutes.
Yeah, and then by the time you get there, you don't even know if you like it. That's the challenge.
Usually hate it, actually. Usually I find that I'm like, oh, this isn't working. And why did I do all that? And then you feel disappointed and you gotta go, oh, I gotta walk away. I've lost this time today. And then you start getting disappointed, and then you get in that rut. And so I have to try to keep it fresh. And we all do this. You have to learn to recognize and be mindful. And that's why I think meditation has helped me with too, is being aware that I'm daydreaming. I'm not even paying attention to what I'm tweaking. Right. My brain is one off into this thing, and I'm just like hoping I find something, instead of just being purposeful and saying, like, oh, now instead of playing with these guitars, and you go back to the vocals and see what they sound like now. Like, let's mute the guitars. Like, the other reason why I think it's important when mixing is to actually mute things while you're working, to like mute, like get the whole mix up, try to get a balance, and then mute a bunch of the instruments and see what it sounds like with just a couple things. And then bring something in, or then mute the vocal and then bring the guitars in against the drums. How's that working? And then bring the vocal back in and go, now what are the guitars and vocals doing? Or mute the drums and bass and listen to the guitar and vocal together. How are those working together, right? And play those games so your attention isn't being pulled in a bunch of places. And then you start to get this sense of like where these things are fighting each other. I think more easy is better and more quick to getting to the point of hearing where the clarity is being messed up with, right? Instead of having everything in and just being like, especially when you get songs like, I'm mixing this album right now, I don't know the name of the band, but they're self-producing it. So like they don't have anyone there going, hey, you know what? It's too many things, right?
Right.
So it's like, there's a couple songs that have 280 tracks. It's a rock band. Yeah.
Wow.
Like string section, horn section, keyboards, guitars, background vocals, lead vocal, drums.
I think sometimes people get in the mindset, because I think I've been here, where it's like you're getting complex with how you record stuff. You're getting complex with how you produce stuff. You just keep adding new ideas that, oh, that would be kind of cool. You hear it in your head on top of whatever else is there. And then you send it to the mixer hoping they can figure out how to get it to all work together.
And that's what a producer's job is, actually.
Right.
That's why you have someone who's not emotionally invested in the creation of the music, who's just there to guide the process. It could be a friend. Like if you're a band and you don't have the money to hire a producer, but you have a friend who you like their opinion, have them hang out a lot and just tell them to be more brutal honest with you. And you guys try to accept a little bit of their brutal honesty, even if it rubs you wrong a little bit, makes you upset even. Like, hear it out. That's what a producer is doing. A producer is saying, like, let's try muting those things and see what it sounds like, right? Like, maybe this section song is too long. Why don't we just try getting rid of part of it, right? And doing the edit with the 2-track mix of it. And just, even if it's not the perfect crossfade points, just to get a sense of how it would flow if you did that instead of trying to edit the multi-track to do it, which can get super hairy, especially if you're using Logic for editing audio.
Right.
Trying to edit sections out of Logic, unless it's just like, oh, okay, this is like...
Oh, that's clever. So what you're saying is like, you know, when we are rearranging the song, I'm used to rearranging it in Pro Tools in the actual multi-track session, and I'll have some idea and then you try it. But a lot of times it's like, 10 steps to just
too many steps
get everything
to get
in place to even hear that rearrangement.
Yeah.
And if you can actually just do a couple of different versions and print them, just stitch that back together really quickly.
Yeah.
That might be a lot quicker. You can even do that probably in the same session. You probably don't even need to make a new session to try that.
No, you just bounce it down, bring it back, make sure that when you do always do this too with Logic or anyone running whatever software, like you should get in the habit of doing your bounce down of your mix and having the file import back into the session timeline and muting that, but it's there so that if you pass this Logic session to the next person, they have the most recent mix version in line, perfectly in time, and they can just solo that up and listen to it and go, this is what their mix sounds like. Does the session sound the same? And they can quickly go like, something's not right, there's something missing, and you can quickly hear, or even easier, if you really want to hear if something's not right, listen to them both at the same time and flip the phase on the stereo mix. Everything should disappear except for the weird modulating effects. And then you can tell whether or not there's a missing instrument, because you can just, what I do now, when I do this to just do a quick visual inspection of anything that might be missing, like parts, I'll take the stereo mix event against their multi-track in their session. If it's a Logic session, and I'll do a bounce down, look at that file, and that file has you can just look at it and be like, it should just be weird warbling stuff and it should be super quiet. It shouldn't be, but if there's also
if you see drum spikes or something,
huge huge area of some instrument playing solo, you can just zoom in on that and listen to it and go, oh, there's a keyboard that is now super loud. Obviously, that's missing from the multi-track because there's no way.
That's a lot faster because it's visual. You get a visual quick reference versus having to listen through the whole song and then remember one version versus the other.
Yeah, you don't have to sit there and like listen. You can just quickly look, and if there is some part that's like obviously either it's missing or it's been added and they didn't do a mix down of it, and then you can say like, hey, hold on, did you guys add one more thing before you've been listening to it? Is this track meant to be in the song, or did you guys forget to get rid of it and mute it? So you can. It's a quick visual inspection of things that may be, and then you can just send them like an audio clip of that one thing that's in that mix down. Like, and he's like, here, listen, this is what is different. And they'll go, oh yeah, that thing's not supposed to be in there. Oh yeah, it's supposed to be in there. And really quickly you can get to these answers from them instead of saying like, it's this track, it's called this. You can just say, and they'll know by hearing it in a voice text message even. They'll like, oh, that's that thing. It's not supposed to be in there. Get rid of it. Or, oh, that's supposed to be in there. And so you'll get
that's very smart because a lot of times we forget the names of tracks.
I mean, totally.
I got to be honest, man. I think we even forget the name of the song that we were working on.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, I mean, that's hard enough. Yeah,
because it's like a lot of those things are you don't look at that. You listen to it all day long. You're not looking at the name of something all day long necessarily.
No, and plus stuff gets renamed because if there's multiple people involved in working on it, and one person thinks it should be called this, they might just rename it, but the rest of the band is referring it to it as what originally was being referred to. And then when you have a conversation about it, they're like, oh, it's supposed to be called this. And it's like, well, it's not called that. It's called this now. Like, yeah. And plus I also require people to rename stuff so that it's more clear. So it's not unless it's a joke name and it's funny and it's meant to, and that's fine. I just don't want it to be like, joke name U67 through LA3A through this through the distressor through this all in the name of the file. Like I don't care about the processors you used. Like
That's what the comments are for.
Yeah, the comment section or notes, take your own notes, but putting in the name of the file. Now, whenever you look at the name on the hard drive or look at anywhere, it's like this super long name. It's super complex. It doesn't mean anything to the mixer because the mixer is just mixing the sounds at that point. Like it's these things that are important during production, but when you hand it to someone else, it should be clear, precise. What is the lead vocal? Not vocal. Which one's the vocal? Like they all sound like background vocals now because like which one's the lead, right? Like name it the lead or name it main, whatever you want to call it, but make it stand out so that anyone receiving it understand that this is the focus, right? You know, and then if you have background vocals that are now taking the lead, maybe just name them leads instead of naming them background. Because then I often get that too. They're like, oh, those backgrounds are supposed to be as loud as the lead. I'm like, well, they just call them doubles, triples, whatever. Right? Don't call them background. If you call them background, then I am confused, and I'm going to treat them.
It's in the title back.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be typically quieter than the lead. And so if you want it to be as loud, just call it a double, triple, whatever, and then I will push it in the same place and put it. And so that's the thing that you learn. I try to spell this out in my mixing template thing, file prepping PDF I send to people. It's like, hey, be clear about stuff. Make everything as clear as possible where like what I'm doing is not doing all this legwork for you because you're not willing to be organized, you know. And that's kind of a telltale sign I have of like understanding what the workload is going to be when I get a new project. Is kind of going, oh, I require people to send me a session now before I even quote them for what I think it's going to cost, because I can get a sense of like, oh, this is going to be 10 hours of just file management. Like, I'm going to spend a full day or a half on like cleaning up their audio, right?
So maybe we should talk about that a little bit, because that was one of the things you taught and showed us down here at the Mixing Mastermind weekend, which was a blast. Rockstar's
it was a lot of. I would love to do that again.
Another one.
Yeah, that was
really fun.
Yeah, I love doing stuff like that because I love teaching the stuff I've learned, and I find it's best to do it where people can experience it. Not saying you can't do this via the internet, which we've talked about, maybe doing something like this now that these technologies are really developed. But in person is really great because then people can get a vibe of what you're talking about. They can hear what you're hearing in the room, and you can point, like play stuff for them. Like, this is what I'm talking about when I say this is the difference between this processor and how it's applied. They can hear it in real time and go, oh, okay, we get that now. Like,
and also everybody has different focuses and interests.
Oh,
so
totally.
It's it's one thing to try and present something to a group, but it's another thing when people start asking questions because you realize, this guy here, who's traveled all the way from Canada is focused on this one thing. This guy who's come from Florida is focused on this. And over here we have somebody from Colorado who's totally interested in a different kind of thing. So it was cool to be able to dive into all that stuff. And you're right. There's no substitute for being in the space. Teaching through the internet and everything is incredibly powerful.
Totally.
But in the end, there's you can only replicate what comes out of a screen or out of the speakers.
Yeah, that it gives you a bunch of ideas. It can give you a bunch of great ideas. Like I watch YouTube videos. I love learning from people who have a different take on stuff. Like there's a ton of people on the internet who have really great takes on sonic approaches. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's something about being in the room with someone, and that's where I learned, was being in the room with other people who were better than me, and always luckily being in a place where I am actually not the strongest suit in the room per se, right? Like I'm a part of a team of people who are all like way performing at a high level, which pushes you to perform at a much higher level than you would if you were around a bunch of people who are performing at not such a good level. Not saying you shouldn't learn from those situations also and actually do the best you can in those situations. But if you can find yourself putting yourself out there in the world and working with people who are operating at a level much higher than you are, like finding bands, musicians, and working for free for a while with them, like if you're just starting out, but they're super talented. They're not just like, sloshing through it, but they're like really great. Like go find a jazz band that's like bonkers good, right? Like a local university. It's like, I'll record you guys for free, like in your practice space, whatever, and just learn like what it is, how good musicians can translate. And you kind of really quickly understand like, oh, when I'm around people who are good, I don't have to work as hard. Like I'd put one mic up and it's like, everything sounds great on that one mic in the room and the whole band sounds good. Like, so,
which is a good thing to realize. And then at the same time, it still doesn't, it doesn't really let us off the hook from knowing what to do when we're working with a band that isn't that talented. We still have to have all the skill sets to make everybody sound as great as we can.
Yeah. Well, it teaches you like that, like, okay, so since this, say, per se, as an example, this drummer is not as good and doesn't hit in a way that makes the drums open up and sing, and is hitting wrong, hitting off center, and it's going boing, 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 and doing all those things, it doesn't sound as good as if you just move over 3 inches to hit the center, it goes boom. It's like, oh, that. So when you have a drummer who's doing boom, 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 then you have to like, how do I make that better, right? This drummer is not going to, during the session, learn how to hit in the center of the drum, right? This drummer just doesn't have that, is not at that point yet. So you can't go and say, you need to play differently. They're not going to. So what can you do as an engineer to make that work? So then you go and like, can I have a couple minutes with the drums by myself? And you sit down, you cloth, like tape, little pads of cloth, whatever you got to do. And you just mute it in a bunch of places and try it out and see what happens, or tightening it in different ways. It's like, I'm going to tune the snare just a little bit different to see if we can get a better sound out of the snare drum for the way you're playing.
So when you do that, do you try and emulate the way this new drummer is hitting the snare drum? Like off center a little bit?
Yeah, I'll go and watch them play. Like you have to be proactive and walk out and be like, all right, just play the song, play it down with everyone, play the song, and just stand there and watch the drummer play. And you just look right at where they're hitting the drum and go, okay, they're hitting roughly right around there, and just making a mental note. That's where they're hitting. Go, okay, cool. I need about 10 minutes, everyone. And then you like go get some coffee, whatever, and you go bong 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 bong, just tape all the stuff you need to do to get it to where like it's not going boom, but it's going right. At least something where it's like
quicker, more like an appropriate. It's kind of like when we were talking about the bass note in the control room, not being short or long the way it's meant to be. You need to dial in the snare so that it has the right length to it.
Yeah.
From synths to strings to studio guitars, Complete 15 has it all. Native Instruments' flagship bundle gives you everything you need to create pro music in any genre. With cutting-edge instruments like Contact 8, Massive X, Battery, Guitar Rig, and Session Guitarist for lifelike electric and acoustic guitar parts. Use our code ROCK10 for 10% off at nativeinstruments.com or get started with Complete Start totally free. What do you do about a beater bounce on the kick drum when you've got a drummer who...
That's a hard
Why don't you describe what that is to the rock stars?
So typically what that is when you have a drummer who has a little bit less technique, who hasn't spent a lot of years like learning to play and get the beater to bounce back off and keep it off. Like good drummers know it. This is a natural thing for drummers who have practiced a lot, is where when they're playing, they're not going boom and it goes blah, blah, right. Like when they hit that one hit,
bounces and keeps hitting.
So if you're going to be the kind of drummer who presses into it, like there's some drummers like Questlove does this. He plays into it and keeps it pressed up against her, and then he knows how to also play off of it. He's an amazing drummer. He does this technique where he can go boom. And you like the D'Angelo record that he played, like the Voodoo record, you hear him going boom, 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 boom. He's like pressing into it, and he's really in control of that. So he's doing either a heel down, a heel up kind of technique, keeping pressure on it, or heel down and letting it toe and let it bounce off. So he has this ability to play with how the drum's decaying. That's a very controlled drummer who knows what they're doing, and they're not getting those extraneous sounds. But drummers who are just going boom, 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 what you get is like all these double hits, right? Yeah. Like these double and triple hits every time, and they're meant to be getting just one hit. They're going blah, 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 and it's really hard to control that when a drummer who has a really loose technique in that way, where they're not really even aware that they're doing it. And you can't even point it out to them because they're going to be like, I don't even notice that. To them, they don't even hear it. Like they don't even know. They're not paying attention to it. They're not hearing it. They're not going to hear it during the session. So I find that depending on the song and the context, sometimes just really trying to pillow up the drum, which 70s style, take the front head off, put a pillow in it, right? Put a pillow in it.
Tighten it up, similar to the snare drum, just make it a tighter.
And make it so that it doesn't have any extra wong, wong, which is kind of the thing. If they have a drum that's like got a front hole in it, but the drum is kind of open sounding, that's cool sounding if you can play with that. But if you're a kind of drummer who can't play with that and it's just going because the drum head is allowed to move more. So then I'm putting a pillow in, taking like a cement block and putting it in there on top of the pillow, like, and just having it just go and the whole drum, tuning it down a little bit so the drum head is even a little bit loose, so it's not going it's not moving as much. It's just more of a sound that actually can sound really good depending on, but then often when you do that, drummers who are used to a certain thing, like their foot falls apart. So you got to be careful. Right. Like their ability to play the song falls apart because like they're used to that bounce.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that's probably worth mentioning is sometimes the wackiness of how people play instruments is the correct sound for the music, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember first realizing that with bass. Sometimes, you know, flailing wild bass with a pick that just seems uncontrolled is actually the right sound for the music.
Totally. Yeah. It just depends on context. Like, but if you tell that someone is trying to do something and they're just not getting it, maybe spending a little time figuring out how to technically activate the sound more for them. Like what I find with bass is like giving the bass player a bunch more compression on the sound. Maybe not recording it that way, but putting a plug-in on the track and going again, so the sustain gets brought way up so they can actually hear that when they let go of the strings, it's like it's taking off on them. So in their headphones, they can hear that like every little thing they do is blasting in their face. Like you hear all these little details and they start going, oh, same thing with drums. Like sometimes drummers need to have a much more compressed headphone mix and their overheads are brought much louder, very compressed. And by hearing that compression, they're playing into it more. Like, and that forces them to play differently for the context.
Definitely experienced that myself on drums where it's like, if the mix is really hot, you can find all these subtleties in the sound because you're hearing it come back in the headphones.
Yep.
But if it's down low, you know, you're more likely to just kind of bash it.
Yeah, totally. They'll bash less if the overheads are super loud and kind of on the compressed side, like take an LA2A type compressor or LA3A because I like that one. And put it and compress it like 3 or 4 or 5 dB, you know, and then bring the level back up and give them that in their headphones. They'll be like, whoa, my drums sound great, man. This is cool. And they'll go to hit that cymbal and I'll be like, whoa, okay, that's like.
Now, which kind of overheads are we talking about? Because I mean, sometimes I think right now I just have a pair of small diaphragms,
doesn't matter.
ORTF above it. And then sometimes they're like larger ones and you do the Glyn Johns technique and stuff.
I think it works for any overhead. It's just about bringing that sound of the sustain of the cymbals up, the sustain of everything up so they can hear it. So they can hear that like, because they're edge hitting that cymbal, it's going and they'll go, whoa, okay, maybe I need to back off a little bit. And then they'll play differently.
And then you go, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's like, it really depends. With some drummers, they're unreachable in that way, I'd say, and they're just going to do that. And you have to just mic accordingly and start changing your techniques and using mics, different kinds of mics to try to get rid of the cymbals, like figure 8 pattern condensers or figure 8 pattern ribbons and placing them away where you have no cymbals. You overhead mics have the least amount of cymbal pop. You still hear the cymbals no matter what. Like, and you're getting more of because you want the space of the drums. Otherwise, the drums sound weird when you don't have that space. But you're trying to get that space without the cymbals. So you're using figure 8 mics positioned in a way to reject some of that craziness because they're just going to be like, you know.
Yeah. Can you figure 8 reject a hi-hat somehow?
Yeah. I do it all the time.
I guess you just sort of tilt it slightly.
You bring it up higher. You take a ribbon mic or a condenser mic that's figure 8 and bring it up right level with the hi-hat. You have the hi-hat right here, right? And you're pointing it at the snare drum instead of having it down on the snare drum. You bring it up to where the side of the mic is level with the hi-hat. pointing at the
fascinating.
snare
So
drum.
that's the snare mic you're talking about.
Yeah, take the snare mic and you go like if I find that like a 57 or some kind of close mic is not getting the sound and there's just a ton of hi-hat in it because the guy's just going right?
Yeah.
It's going like this. But going I just like take a figure 8 mic, bring it out off, and then that's the snare sound. And then they go, it doesn't have as much low end. I'm like, that's your problem. Like I mean, that's the deal. You guys, I can't, and then but at least I don't have as much. I can now compress that mic more and have less of that hi-hat and the snare. Actually, I can bring the snare out and I can put compression on it and boost the low end and do things to it, and it actually sounds better. And actually, for a lot of drums in general, they sound better mic'd off just a little bit anyways. Like
you get a little more air in there.
Yeah, floor toms actually sound better when the floor tom mic is like a foot off of the floor tom. You have the whole drum head sound. You have the full low end from it, not just this center focus of the low end, but like that's how I feel about drums. And everyone else has their opinion, but for me, that's how I think drums sound the best, when they're like, you're taking a photograph of the drum instead of taking the whole drum, instead of taking a photograph of like 3 inches of the head. Because when you take a mic and put it down on the head, you're taking a picture of an area about this big of the drum head, right? And all the weird resonances that are happening inside of the drum and around the head, but you're not taking a picture of the drum as a whole. So if you zoom off a little bit, the whole drum becomes the sound of a drum, and it sounds like a drum. So when you listen to the recording, it's like, that's the sound like a floor tom to me, instead of like
and then the tricky part about that, the conundrum for us engineers, is when you move the mic away from the drum and it sounds better, now all of a sudden it's that mic is sort of, it picks up the other drums too. So it's not clear which drum is in there. And so that can sometimes be tricky. There's a drummer here, Mike Radovsky, I worked with in my studio, and he always told me, like, he intentionally just trained himself to put all his cymbals way up high so that there was plenty of room to mic up the drum shells below.
Well, that was an 80s thing. If you go back and look at video footage of sessions like Jeff Porcaro, Vinny Colaiuta and any of that stuff, Vinny Colaiuta or Terry Bozzio playing in Zappa's band, like that was kind of like a technical thing. Like they understood, like, oh, if I start putting my ride cymbals and all my cymbals up here, my toms are down here, the front of house engineer or a recording engineer in the studio had really accurate isolation. So they learned.
I think they also just wanted to be seen. They were like, "Oh, now the audience can see me."
Well, it's flamboyance too.
The drums and the
that was also Terry Bozzio was like one of those drummers who's just like, you go look at the Baby Snakes live, that amazing footage.
Great stuff.
Yeah, him singing and screaming and playing this big double bass drum set with 7 times. Like he could actually play a big drum set like that. Most drummers can't play big drum sets like that. Like
Baby Snakes.
So good.
So speaking of which, mics, I remember might as well just give him a shout out. Pretty recently you asked me about some of the Jay-Z microphones, and then you picked up a pair.
They're amazing.
Tell us about which ones you got.
I got the A11s. Is that what they are? Or V11s?
Or the V11s.
Yeah,
the V11s, yeah. It's part of their vintage series.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. Like
they're cool. They're dark, right?
Yeah, dark in that area where you don't want, which is like 3K, 4K. Like they have a dip in 3K, 4K, which is like what you don't want in an overhead mic. Like I find that's the frequency that you're like, I'm always going with an EQ. Like first thing I do when I'm mixing, I'm like, oh, let's cut some 4K. It's like, because it just gets rid of that stuff that is cutting into everything else, right? It's the most sensitive part of our hearing, between 2.5 to like 6K, is like where our ears are like super dialed in. So a couple dB dip of that is like, now I can do the Glenn Johns, like 2 mics on a drum set overhead and a kick drum mic, and it sounds great. It's like crazy how good it sounds. Like, so it's like that is kind of like, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and I think they remind me of like the Sony C37A is like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you go and listen
absolutely.
to this, that's kind of why I think a lot of people are like, so Sony C37A, why is it so smooth and warm around? It's because it's cutting the 3K, 4K range. And I don't know if the Jay-Z mic guys did that on purpose, and copied that kind of idea, but that's generally what I feel is going on with the Sony mic, is that you put it up in front of something, it's bright enough, has a bunch of nice airy top end, but it's not, it doesn't have that upper mid that's going like, whoa.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they probably did have some intention around that. Although what's fascinating to me about mic design is we think about, because we're in a mixing mindset, we think about EQ curves, we think about grabbing something and bringing something down. And in circuit design, you can certainly do that. You can certainly have equalization in circuit design, but then there's also components like transformers that respond differently. And the capsule design itself actually just resonates in different ways, which if I recall correctly, you can choose the gap between the diaphragm of a mic capsule and the back plate of it.
Because one's out of phase and the other one.
That's right, and then that actually will phase out certain frequencies.
That'll tune the frequency, tune the resonant frequency cancellation point. So like you imagine two plates that are receiving sound, right? One's receiving sound from the backside and it's 180 degrees out of phase from the front side. And how those are blended together is how you create cardioid or hypercardioid, right? Like you can't, like otherwise, if you don't have this back plate, you have omni. And that's why how omni microphones work is there's no alternate information coming to the backside of the sound of the capsule. It's only coming to the front side. And so it's picking up sound in all directions, technically, like equally. So
now what about dual diaphragm, multi-pattern mics that have
they're playing with the phase relationship between and feeding signals into each other level wise, or changing level balance between the two. So like they're both out of phase. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you noticed mics that don't have switchable patterns that are omni? Do they have? I mean, I would assume that they have more of a natural clarity and focus to one
like
that needs to be sort of constructed that way.
Yeah, the Earthwork style microphones, like that pencil style with the single capsule, is way more phase accurate from 10 hertz to like 200K or whatever, right? So as the measurement like flat.
Yeah.
The B&K, same thing. Those measurement style microphones don't use resonant chambers or multiple capsules to create the sound, so it's more linear and it has a faster transit response even down to super low end. And that's why they're used as measurement microphones, because it gives you a super accurate representation of the transient information even down at super low frequencies, which is where all other microphones fail when it comes to transient response, is ability to reproduce a transient wavefront without any distortion or overshoot or anything. It's like,
right.
It's what's being produced the best. It can't being turned into an electrical signal without any distortion. And that's the goal, or very low distortion. There's some distortion inherent in everything, but the lowest possible distortion.
I used to have a pair of those TC30Ks.
They're great.
They were like the first mics I ever bought in the 90s, and they sounded so good on drums. I ended up trading them with a friend for a Leslie cabinet, which I actually used a lot more, but I miss them. And I remember doing Glyn John's recording of myself on drums, and I was like, wow, that sounds...
Yeah, I mean, they sound great.
It's omni, though, so you have to make sure your room sounds right,
Less low end, too.
Less low end, yeah.
You get less low end because in omni, like, you just don't have proximities. Even if you're like 3 feet from a drum, you get less proximity. It's more how our ears hear it, actually. Like, we don't hear, if you go and stand 3 feet from a floor tom and hit it, you don't hear this big low end boom, right? Like, just, that's okay. That's just how our ears work. But, so the omni thing as overheads is it's more accurate, and it gives you a better sense of like stereo, especially if you really know how to play with the mics and how they're positioned, and you can get a really like real to life, like kind of scary representation of a spatial recording. And that's why like, if you look at all the really great classical techniques, there's like omnis are used a lot, figure eights are used in a certain way, MS, so you can get these really interesting, like realistic representations of stereo. You can do the same thing with a drum set. You just have to understand what to expect and know that you're not going to get, like, it's not going to sound like, like a super warm, old, crusty sound. It's going to be clear and more upfront. and just realistic in that way, which is sometimes what you want. Like, you just have to realize, like, sometimes we just need to go there with it, right? Like, very little distortion, very clear, very open. Sometimes that's just what sound means, so it's about context.
iZotope is truly amazing for mixing and mastering your music. Check out the new iZotope Velvet plugin, featuring intelligent sibilance learn de-essing that automatically detects harsh frequencies, dynamic tone shaping with lift and tame controls, and transparent declick to clean up mouth noises, pops, and clicks, all in one easy plugin for polished professional vocals. And now, Ozone 11 takes your mastering game even further with the new Clarity module for adaptive spectral enhancement, upward compression in the maximizer for increased punch without losing dynamics, and stem focus to process individual elements like vocals or drums with surgical precision. Use the code ROCK10 to get 10% off Velvet, Ozone, or any fantastic plugin at iZotope.com. Howdy, rock stars. We're back now for the jam session, aka the second half of the show. My guest today is Collin Dupuis, joining us from his studio up in Detroit, Michigan. Collin, are you ready to jam, dude?
Totally.
So one of the things that we talk about a fair amount, like whether it's on the show or at the Mixing Mastermind down here, is how to use extra tools to help you with your automation and stuff like that. And one of them, of course, is SoundFlow. We've spent a lot of time talking about that, which has been really helpful, which integrates with the Stream Deck controller really well. And we'll talk more about that. I didn't quite have that set up here yet. I think I'll be getting that set up later. But in the meantime, I set up a bunch of little command buttons for my podcast right now so that I can do all these cool things. Like, it's really fun when you discover what's possible in macros and automation. Like, I have 3 screens set up now, and I was able to make a button that I hit it once, and it just brings my cursor right back to the center of my center screen, so I can find it really quickly.
What, for Pro Tools or for
just
whatever?
Just for Mac, yeah, just for my Mac. You know,
you're talking about your mouse cursor, so it just goes
mouse
like this?
cursor. I just lose it. I can't find it.
That's why I like that thing where you go like this and it jumps up and gets bigger.
Yeah, although mine doesn't. Yeah, it does that, but you really got to wiggle the shit out of it. But anyway, I was just psyched about that. It was fun to like figure out how to do that. So, like, for example, I can now press a button and hopefully screen share something more quickly for these live interviews. So tell us about you. Anything new in that world for you? Is that worth
technology wise?
Yeah, just like SoundFlow, controllers, interface stuff for mixing.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. So I've like, my SoundFlow thing is always adapting, right? So I'm always like trying new things, every time I find myself doing something and I do it often, I'm like, I'm always doing this thing. So like, how can I make it so I have to do that thing, right? I don't have to like go and click. I can just less clicking, less even having to think about it, right? So I have added new, really the great thing is SoundFlow added this thing where they have the Samply connection where you can like set up buttons to just send things right from, you can either have your Pro Tools session, do a bounce down right then and there and send it to Samply. And then you can choose what Samply project it's going into from that window that pops up. So but I do
cool. to use that.
So I have a button for Finder to Samply, so I can go to after I do the bounce down, because I prefer my own controlling the way the bounce goes, because they haven't given enough options yet in it that you can choose like how many different files, format, things like that. It just does it automatically where the song is at, but it doesn't do it in the way that I like to do it, because I like to bounce both my pre-master and the loud reference together. I have 2 different buses that are feeding out of Pro Tools for that bounce. So it happens at once and imports back into the song, and I have to deal with it. It's just in the song. It's also in a folder that I can send. So if for some reason that's the final mix, I don't have to do it again. And if someone's like quickly asking me when I'm not in my computer, we're going to mastering, we need the pre-master, we need the files for mastering, I can just send the link to them right from the folder that's in because my Pro Tools session sits on Dropbox. I can just go to my Dropbox app on my phone and go, here's the link to the pre-master file for you to send to mastering, and then they can just send that along. And I don't have to be in front of my computer to do that. So I've been working.
I gotta agree with you on that too. There are a lot of things that I like to do from my phone just because it's convenient. I mean, I even edit videos. For this podcast, sometimes I'm editing, sponsor videos and things like that just on my iPhone with a CapCut app, which got removed from the marketplace recently.
Of course, right.
So hopefully it'll come back.
So I was
like, I just figured out how to use it.
Yeah, exactly. So like that kind of stuff, being able to send stuff to Samply and have it go to this thing. And all I have to do is open the Samply app. And if I want to put it into the stack, Samply does like a playlist kind of style thing. I just have to drag it onto it.
Tell the rockstars what Samply is too, just in
Samply
case
is
new for somebody.
Samply is a service you pay for if you want to use it professionally. You can use it for free. They have a free option. It has limited functionality for you. People can't download files if you want to give them the option to do that. There's like things that they can't do. You can't do level matching, which I find more and more I'm using it. It's really helpful for keeping people on point and not complaining about the level between songs, right? Because like I have a pre-mastering like loudness I'm doing to each mix, and that's what people are listening to. But even then, some songs just need a little bit of like they just need to be level matched even in that context, So even within
I find the level matching is amazing. Like even just listening are going. So Samply is a cloud-based platform, Rockstar. So you upload mixes you're doing in there in a project or whatever, and you can have versions of the mixes, and if you actually click between the versions, it will keep the playhead going. So you're
listening in real
instantly
time.
Comparing. Yeah. And it does that level matching that Colin's talking about. But it's cool to be able to hear like your rough mix level matched against, a mix you've been working on. Cause then sometimes you're like, did I make it better? Yeah. This is better.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, we were using it for Chris Chamness's mixes, and I can click from my rough to yours and I'm like, hey, I got better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the goal, right? Like we're being hired to improve it. So, and I can do the same thing. Like if I have an artist or a client who is just really doubting everything because they're in their head and they're not really hearing the song just because the mix sounds good. They're hearing the riff. I can go, okay, you like your rough. Okay, let's put it in the Samply playlist. And now you can go listen to your rough against my mix and to tell me level matched. Yours was louder, but does it sound better now? And then they can go, oh, your mix does sound better, but can we change it? It's more, they start to realize that it's more about there's an instrument that's not as loud. And then they can hear that and go, oh, I would really like to hear more of this keyboard, right? Or whatever. Like they can, and it's less about their emotional state. It's more about just a pragmatic thing that needs to actually be changed. And they get out of the head because they realize actually the mix does sound better. And if not, then they fire me and then they go and find someone else. And that's just fine too. And that happens. And so that's just the way it is.
I find that even internally, like when I'm doing a mix myself and I've got the rough mix, being able to listen back, like in the car, for example. Now that's the one place for some reason, the Apple iOS system doesn't allow the level matching on playback. So it has to be on the desktop to be able to hear that, which is great because you can hear it in the studio environment. But in the car, just even going between the rough mix and my new mix, I might think my new mix sounds better, but I might also discover, there's something about like the way I'm using the room mics on the drums that's more exciting in the rough mix. I need to be bolder in the final mix, that kind of stuff,
Yeah. So it's a really great service. It provides really great functionality and tools. There's a few interface things I keep communicating them about. Like, can we make this like not so much about having to click with the mouse and more about actually having just a thing you click on and I have to do like the thing that still bothers me about it is you have to click on the thing and hold and wait for it to highlight. And then you get all these options down below that you have to then move your mouse down to choose rename. It should just be like, click over on the three dots on the right and then go rename. Right. And then rename it or just double click on it and be able to rename it, whatever it is.
Like on the Mac, you just select it and hit the enter button or you just wiggle your button mouse.
Yeah. There should be there's some editing things that they need to, you can tell that it's engineers who aren't using it or designing it. That's what happens with these programmers. They design it and they're like, it's like, Yeah, well, you try. Then you gotta if you gotta go from here to here on the screen to change the name. It's like, come on, guys. Like,
We're dealing with that everywhere
yeah,
in software, though.
yeah. It's like,
For sure.
yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a very cool tool. So, oh yeah, you were talking about SoundFlow having a button now that will do the bounce your mix. So,
Well, I don't do the. I still do just my bouncing. I just do Finder to sampling, so I can choose. I can go to the folder, the bounce folder, where I bounce the loud reference for this thing. Select it in Finder and press Finder sampling, and it'll upload it to. And then it pops up a window that says what project you're uploading it to, and I choose the project and hit enter, and it goes boom, and I open up Samply and drag it into the spot, and it's like way less movements, way less me going dragging and dropping and waiting. It just goes doot 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 and done. So it's knocks 10 seconds off of a process versus some which is do it enough times. It gives you a little bit of time back. It makes it a little bit more fluid, less time spent. The other thing is
and
cool.
the thing is, when it comes to macros too, I find that because I've seen this consistently over the years, is like there's always ones that are presented to you like, hey, look at this great trick it does. And then you're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And then you might think like, yeah, I didn't really use it.
There's some that you find
some you use and some you don't. But in the end, what I learned is we have our custom needs. We have our personal, workflow.
Yeah.
And so it's really great when you start to dive in a little bit, you just put in that little bit of extra time and start learning how to create your own, automation tools like that and workflow enhancement macros.
The other one is using, I've dialed in even more my focusing of Pro Tools session. I've created, well, everyone who's been using Pro Tools for a while knows that these are functions you can do where you can use Windows configurations, it's called in Pro Tools. And it sounds like a Windows PC thing, but it's Windows configurations in Pro Tools allows you to save how the screen is functioning, whatever it is you have going. It's like whatever windows are open at the time. It could be like plugins. It can be like how many tracks you're seeing, what you're seeing, either mixer or the edit window, how much they're zoomed, zoomed in and out horizontally, vertically. You can set all these parameters and set it as a marker, but it doesn't have to be a timeline marker. It's just a marker in the system, and you can number it. So then you set up Windows configurations with a marker, with a number. So I've created on my mixer template in SoundFlow that I have things like drum focus, bass focus, keyboards, strings, synths, whatever, background vocals, lead vocals. Then I have some custom ones. So if I want to create groups of things, if I want to hear, say, the keyboards and the vocals together, I can press that one and only see those on the screen. So then I can get myself where I'm only bringing those into focus, and then I can go and make a balance choice between those. And I have to be like zooming around to make that balance choice. They're just all the faders in front of me. And I can go, okay, let me turn this up, turn that. Okay, cool. That's how it sounds good. And get to that point of hearing those things quickly. Like if I was on an analog board, I'd go, okay, here's the vocals, here's the keyboards, and go, that's the most streamlined way of doing it. But like, since I'm not mixing an analog board anymore, I'm trying to figure out a way of getting it so I can have it, so I can see things and get the 8 faders in front of me to be able to like bank only twice. I have to go bank between 2 things to do the balance versus having to go bank, 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 bank. And then you're never really in the flow. You're like now thinking about having to bank and looking and visually. So it allows me to keep things flowing in that way. The other thing is I've created a new called Mix Previous. I have this thing where I can switch what I'm monitoring. I have the reference mix, a button where I can press that and it'll toggle between hearing their reference mix and my mix currently.
Oh, very cool.
I have a button, I just press it and just toggle between their mix, my mix. And I have another one called Mix Previous, in which it toggles between my current mix and my previous mix, which is another own audio track where I can drag the previous mix to. I create a new version on version 4, and I want to listen to version 3. I drag version 3 to it, and then I can listen to my previous mix as I'm making changes. So I can just find a section of the song, go like, they asked me to make this change. I make that change, and I can sit there and go ding, 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 ding. Which one's the sound?
So it's so a lot of times I'm using like metric AB from Plugin Alliance.
This is
to go back and forth in that moment, but it does require some
Yeah.
This is just a button setup every time.
Yeah, this is just a button that all I have to do is drag audio files. Like when they import their rough mix or their reference mix into my mix that I'm doing, I make sure it's all lined up. Now it's routed to left to right, but not through any limiting. And now I just rename that track reference mix so that my template always knows, this function always knows to switch soloing between reference mix and my full mix bus, and just flips between those two. And the same thing of previous mix. It knows.
So now how do you program the soloing feature in Pro Tools?
It just does. It's a macro that tells Pro Tools what to be soloing up.
Are you ready to launch your career in the audio or entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, right here in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs to prepare you for the industry. From studio production and live sound to audio for film and a whole lot more. You'll learn by doing, working with professional grade gear alongside experienced industry pros. If you're more into the business side of entertainment, SAE's Entertainment Business Program teaches essential basics like contracts and promotion to help you navigate the industry. With diploma, associate, or bachelor's degrees, there's a path for everyone. Plus, Career Services supports graduates as they take the next step. Want to see it for yourself? Immerse yourself in Nashville's exciting music scene and book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Right, but where I guess does Markers let you do solo groups as well?
This isn't a marker thing. This is just straight up a macro that allows you to,
and that's the magic of SoundFlow.
This is a macro SoundFlow program that allows you to just solo, but choose which two tracks you're soloing. Either like in this macro, it's either my mix bus, which is called mix one, whatever it is. It's the macro is either choosing to solo or to listen to mix one or to solo reference mix track. And then same thing with previous mix, either soloing this track that goes and finds a track called previous mix. So whatever's on that track, it's soloing that. As long as that track's named that and doesn't change, it will find that and solo it up. And then in the other state, it mutes that and listens to my full mix.
That's so cool. That's
toggles really between those things. So it's a way of having I just figured out ways of having like having a mixing board with a 2-track listen back versus the mix bus to the board and being able to just flip. You know, when you're working on an SSL or some board that has those functionalities, you get used to that. You're like, oh, I can go switch between like because what I used to do is take a print out of Pro Tools, a pair of outputs of Pro Tools, and route that into the 2-track input of an SSL, right? So say tracks 95 and 96. If we had, there's one studio I worked at had these 96 output Pro Tools were going into an 88 input SSL. Well, it only had 88 input, so I would just choose the last two, feed those out into the 2-track input, and so anything that we printed previously from the board into Pro Tools would come back onto that, and I could hear the previous mix and be like, all right, when we have to do a recall, you can go like, all right, does it sound the same? It sounds similar? Okay, cool. It sounds similar enough. Okay, cool. Like, so I'm doing the same thing.
That's what I've watched Tom Lord Alge doing when we were mixing with him back end of the 90s. Yeah. And I was just so struck by that. I was like, oh, he does recalls and he's got the mix there.
Of course.
And he's flipping the button and he can just hear when something's out.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh, that's off.
It's the first time I'd ever heard of something like that. You know?
Yeah. Wow. So I'm doing a similar thing where I can, and also kind of as a quick mental check when I'm going and opening up, that I can go and listen and go like, did my mix come back fully?
Right.
Is there something, did I demo a plugin that now is not working and then something's different sounding and I'm not paying it because I have so much going on. I don't have time to think about it. Like, and so sometimes that happens where you're like, something's different sounding. And so the other thing you can do with having that previous mix thing, if you really want to check, you can do the phase thing. You phase flip just that track, the mix previous, blend it into your mix, and it should disappear everything except for the thing that's different. And if it's drastically different, then there's a plugin missing, right? There's something that didn't come back up, and then you can go and find it and spend your time solving that problem, because you could print something and not realize it's missing something that's important to the sound, and the artist is going, why does it not sound right now? And then you're not even realizing that there's a plugin that is missing because you demoed it because they had it on a thing and you forgot to commit it or whatever it is, like something has changed. So it allows you to just keep yourself in check, and not do all this work on it and be like, oh, fuck.
Recall problems.
Yeah.
We didn't used to have those problems before recall.
No, it's done. And then you just had to do it again.
Finish your work that day in the studio. Yeah.
And if you needed to do another mix, you did a different new mix. Like, so one other thing I wanted to point out with technology that has been very useful, not just with SoundFlow, is that kind of stuff. I've actually changed a little bit my approach to mixing. I'm actually starting all my multi-track tracks, my template, with 0 plugins on them.
Oh, nice. Hey, do you want to, if you're looking over at your pad, do you want to scoot your mic a little bit so that it stays on you as you look at it?
Yeah. So yeah, sorry. I'll be conscious of that. I can be like, it's like,
it's that SM7. It's so like good. They always said it's like got great off-axis rejection, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's that.
So wait, what was the new technology you were just saying?
I changed my approach to mixing.
Plugins.
I just start the song now with no plugins, and I've added a bunch more of the plugins I like to use to my plugin recall SoundFlow template, so that I have more options. And now that's actually the last couple of projects I've been mixing. It's actually giving me a new lease on my approach, because then I'm listening to a sound and going like, let me try a 4K SSL plugin on that. Right. And see what that EQ sounds like, and like crank the compressor on that, instead of just going like, I always had this EQ on there. Like, okay, let me try this. It's kind of, I felt myself getting stuck in a rut of repeating the same thing, because I had the template that had the same plugins on it. I'm like, all right, I need to do something different. So now I've tried that and actually really enjoying that. Like, okay, cool. I don't need to do all that like stuff. I don't need to look at all that stuff now. I can just choose a couple things and get into some weird stuff quicker. And it forces my hand to try new sounds, new plugins on something for a sound. Right.
So to describe it, using what your setup is, you have an iPad over to the side with all these buttons on it with graphic images. You can actually have a little image of each plugin, even.
I can
so that
lift my iPad
can tell
up.
what it looks like, right? And then you would select the track in Pro Tools.
Yeah, you just select the
bass track, and you just hit a button, and it's going to put that plugin on the first plugin slot.
Yeah, basically.
Like that,
And then if I feel like, and I always try to, even when I put it on the first slot, I'll drag it over to the second slot. So I keep the first slot open. So if I insinuate a new plugin, I can see what it sounds like right away on the first slot. And then I can drag it post that other process I might having, and allows me to kind of just get in this zone where I'm like always leaving the option of seeing what it sounds like before and after.
Something. Yeah, it's good thinking. Yeah.
Sometimes I'll even
still doesn't have the plugin shuffle. I think other apps like
totally.
Logic do, right?
Logic has one. So does Pro Tools does have a plugin shuffle thing now. It does shuffle things. It'll shuffle.
Oh, that's right. It does. Sorry.
Yeah,
Pro Tools.
It shuffles things, but it's still. I like to control. I'm just a control person. I want to control the function. I want it doing it for me, because then I'm like, why is it doing that thing for me? Like, some stuff is great when it's helping you, but some stuff when you're like, go to do something and like, I didn't mean it to do that. Like, stop doing that thing. It's thing with my iPhone, and it's like, no, I didn't mean to do that. Stop doing that thing. Like, like I didn't tell you to do that. Like, damn robot. Like,
that's funny. That's funny. Okay, cool. So then now you are also. Oh, and so one last point, Rockstars. Again, Collin came down. We did a awesome mixing weekend here. If you want more of that, or if you want us to do more teaching in depth, even online, just let us know. Drop a comment in.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And like this video and all that, because we'll dive deeper for you. Whatever you tell us what you want, and then we'll make that happen.
Full service here.
Yeah. So you were talking about going to a new studio too.
So I kind of. This studio is not a new studio. It's been around for a while. It's the studio that Eminem cut his first album in, 54 Sound. And the owner of that studio is Joel Martin, who is an amazing Detroit music person. He is, he's involved in a lot of different things. He back in the day when he was like an engineer and producer back in the 70s and 80s, he was working with like he was friends with George Clinton. He still is friends with George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic. So he's working with Parliament Funkadelic in the late 70s and early 80s. Like, he, he cut and produced with some other engineers, I think, on hand, the Romantics, like big hits, like What I Like About You. Yeah, he produced. He produced that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So like he's been around. He is a personality, big personality, a very nice guy. I've used to work for him in a indirect way when I worked at this rap studio called FBT, which is the Bass Brothers who produced the Eminem first record. So I worked at their studio for about 5.5 years. It was an SSL room as just a house engineer on a house gig. And I did a bunch of really great record stuff. And I learned a lot about like rap production and that style of working in that kind of environment at that time. So I developed a relationship with, when I got back into Detroit, I reached out to him and said like, hey, I'm in town. If you need help with anything, let me know. As he reached out and was like, hey, I got a bunch of stuff going on. Why don't you come in here and let's have a conversation? So I had a conversation. And he's like, I got this Neve board that I got from a studio in Detroit that was Mike McLean and the other engineer, Motown engineers. And this was bought for Motown LA. It's meant to go into Motown LA. Barry Gordy, they did some string sessions on it. He wasn't really into the sound of it because it wasn't what he was used to. It was Neve. It's a very different sound than like the American mixing board. So Barry Gordy didn't want to have anything to do with it for some reason. So these guys put it into another studio in Detroit, and it was there for a while, cutting records. All these Parliament Funkadelic records and all this different stuff went down. This is like their 70s when this went down. So this board was in Detroit, has been in Detroit for a while, and Joel now has it. And so he got a hold of me and was like, come in and hear the board, check it out. So I came in and listened to it. It was like, so it was placed in the corner in the room, this big garage room. And like, I was kind of like, all right, we need it's like, let's have, like, so I sat down with him and was like, this is my interpretation of what you have. You have this amazing board, but it needs to be moved. We need to get into the details of like how that's going to work out, where it needs to be placed in the room acoustically so the speakers will sound better. Because he had these big custom speakers that Norm Druce, my friend Norm, who passed away from Atomic Audio, these custom Atomic Audio monitors. Like, so like I got that going for him to kind of show that like, hey, I can do this thing to the full deal. And like I was like, hey, we have like some ground hum issues. So I had them get an electrician in there, fix the grounding issues. Got an atomic power supply on there to clean up that. They had this old power supply that was like making the Neve noisy. I was like, we got to solve these things. So the fast forward, I've done that. Now I'm kind of working there a couple days a week, going there and just helping stuff. Like we got a bunch of SSL. He's got 2 SSL rooms outside of that, 2 like full on Augsburger main style SSL rooms, like two 4Ks, G pluses, 2 different mixing rooms, including this Neve room board. Then he has this other video editing production company in this other building. He owns all these buildings, right? He has multiple buildings because, he had Eminem in his studio for years. So like he was making good money. Like, so he's able to buy all these buildings around him. And so he owns all these buildings, like a complex of studios basically on the street. So he has all these really great studios. So we're working on developing these things, getting like fixing gear, getting things up. He has a decent good amount of microphones, decent good amount of old cool vintage outboard gear, especially like some non-serial number 1176s that were like Mike McLean, like had like the Bill Putnam, whoever, send us the 1176 before it was being released.
Wow.
Non-serial number versions that are Class A output. Like they're not your typical Class A, B output. Like it's a Class A output driving output stage. So he has some stuff like that where it's like no one else has like these kind of things. So it's really cool. He's very generous. Like I have keys to the place, and like it's just that kind of thing where he's like, yeah, bring stuff in. Like, come on. He's got 3 Stevens tape machines.
Yeah, that's
multi-track.
Cool, man. Tell us about the Stevens.
So Stevens reel-to-reel recorders are famously, if you go and look historically what records they were done, like the Pink Floyd, The Wall, like there's a ton of amazing records that like sonically the Stevens machine is the cleanest machine, right? They were designed to be the least, like they're designed to be the best sounding. Like this, like the least amount of, if you look at the circuits around the tape and how it plays and records, there's the least amount of components involved. That was the idea.
Still transformer in and out or no?
No, they're unbalanced. But they
Wow.
sound really good. Like it's crazy how good these machines have. They have VSO, like, they have ability to vary speed and do things like that. He has 2-inch 16 track head stacks. He has 2-inch 24 track head stacks. He has 1-inch 8 track head stacks for him.
You don't need to play guitar to sound like a pro. Session guitarist from Native Instruments delivers hundreds of lifelike guitar performances, both electric and acoustic, right inside Contact. Whether you're laying down rockin' electric riffs or warm acoustic beds, you'll get 154 electric guitar patterns and over 250 acoustic guitar grooves for strumming and fingerpicking, all grouped into song-ready presets. Dial in recording quality tone with built-in amps, cabinets, mic modeling, and effects. You can drag and drop MIDI into your tracks effortlessly, then tweak tempo, tuning, and feel to fit your song. And with new session packs on the way, you'll never run out of inspiration. Visit nativeinstruments.com, use the code ROCK10 for 10% off, and bring full guitar performances to your next track. No more blisters on your fingers. I think there was wasn't there a 1 or 2-inch 32 track that they made?
They may have been,
Remember that?
Stevens may have made one. The idea behind the Stevens machines, they were meant to be very portable. Like you could take the 24 track and it's in this box and just take it and pick it up, one person, and take it to some location and set it up and record with it. Like it's meant to be, but they're really good sounding machines. And so I've kind of been learning on those and I have some deals going on with some local bands to try to get them in. Now they've kind of solved the technical issues of the space, like getting the noise out and doing things like that. Getting that part of it up. I've done some just test recording sessions in there with my friends in my band, and the drum sounds are bonkers in that room. It's so good sounding. Like this big room, it's that Lenoir style thing where the console's in the room and it's all in one room kind of thing. And it has super high ceilings. It's like 20-foot ceilings in the building. Like, so it's like a really open, like real live sounding, but really still decently controlled because Westbound Records, you know what Westbound Records is? Like Funkadelic, Ohio Players.
Oh, nice.
All the original multi-track master tapes are in that room. Of all of those Ohio Players, all those Funkadelic records are in that room. Those original records, multi-tracks. Joel,
amazing.
they've baked and digitized the whole catalog and all the outtake reels of multi-track, and they're creating this database of multi-track prints from these original, and that they're creating this thing that's not online yet, but the idea is that it's going to be supposedly a library for people to take sampling from, to produce new music from if you want to. And it becomes a shared, when you do use it, automatically becomes a shared license thing. You sign, I agree, and then like if any royalties happen from it, then it's a shared split of this thing that you agreed to. Like, so it's an easy way for, I guess, probably more music producers who take samples from things to be able to do that. But still, the point is, like, instead of it just being something they're sitting on, they're like actively putting it into the world.
Yeah, so and the cool thing maybe about doing a licensing agreement like that is maybe it gives you an easier ability to go really feature a sample if you want to, not feel like you're
going to be taken to the cleaners
within the production, you know?
Or to be taken to the cleaners because you know what the deal is up front. You know what you've agreed to do when you take. So they've done all this stuff and they're still going through it. Like there's a ton of catalog. There's 2 or 3 other engineers who are working there who are just going through this stuff and they're finding the original releases that are there and then trying to match up the multi-tracks and go, is this the one? I don't know. Is this the outtake or is this like the actual release? And like, so you just go in the studio every day and there's like these assistant engineer just sitting there going like, I don't know. And then you can,
and they're playing it back on the Stevens machines.
No, just these are all the things that have already been dumped from the Stevens.
Oh, they've already been transferred. Yeah.
It's already been brought into a multi-track Pro Tools session. So they're still going through the process of figuring out what is the released track. So we're talking about all these Ohio Players records, all these Funkadelic records, all these other releases. And then what they've been doing is they've been hiring some infrasonic people, and they've been doing these re-releases, these vinyl re-releases. If you notice that there's all these new remastered versions of these Ohio Player records that's coming out. That's all coming from that studio. Like they're taking they're taking those 2-track ATR machine they have, and they're dumping it in, and they've had the infrasonic guys up in that studio in that Neve room doing the transfers, baking the tapes, transferring it, cataloging it, making sure they got the right outtake, and then remastering from the original half-inch mix down tapes for the vinyl release.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm involved in help. I'm kind of a technical overseer of the studio. I kind of want to get back into tracking records, but it's just more about, to me, it's about doing stuff I want to do instead of just doing bands to make $1.
Right.
You know, so because I have this opportunity to use this studio, I don't just want to go in there and be like, oh, I need to make some money. Like, you know,
do some cool stuff.
I just want to, so I've been reaching out to people I know and be like, hey, come in, we'll do something. Don't worry about paying for the studio right now. I get to record on this Neve board from the early 70s. And it was modified too. Mike McLean and the guys, 2 engineers from Motown who are technical geniuses, like modified the Neve board. They like changed the Class A output architecture of it to dial it so that the biasing of the output stage of all the line amps is constantly in Class A. So drawing more current, and it transient response is faster. So it's like a Neve board on steroids in a way.
Yeah, so Class A Rockstars is when the signal is entirely operating in the positive voltage.
It's constantly being biased so that like no matter what's happening, the output driving stage that's driving the output transformer of like the 1073 and the bus amps and every other 1070, every time there's one of those driving stages, they buffered it so it's constantly driving in a forward current. So it's ready to accept signal and put signal out right away, and it's not waiting to ramp up, because that's what you talk about slew rate on an op amp is like it doesn't start forward biasing until it gets negative feedback, the signal coming on the output. So the amount of time it takes for the signal that's happening on the output to reach back through the feedback loop back to the negative input of the op amp, that it starts to ramp up, that amount of time it ramps up is the slew rate that it amps up at. So this is not, it has very low slew rate because it's just ready to go, right? Anytime signal's put in, it puts it out.
It's kind of fascinating when you learn about electronics like that, the way you're describing it, and you really dive in, you start realizing that some of the things are just sort of like common sense. Like it's going to take you a minute to run around the house to get back to this point, you know.
These are microsecond things, but when you're talking about the transient response in the low end, you're talking about like the initial ramp up time for a large transient with a large wavefront of information. That slew rate will round off that wave, and you get less of the transient. You get more of like this, like, which is what the Neve is known for, which is great. But this sounds just like the Neve, what Neve is known for, but there's something about the top end of this board that's different. It doesn't have that same like kind of really dark, you know what I'm talking about? Anyone who's worked on a Neve board and mixed through and tracked through the Neve board with the buses and everything knows there's this thing that happens that makes them amazing, but you always want to be boosting the top end a little bit, right? With the EQs, you're always like, because it's just darkening. You don't have to do that as much. I don't find myself reaching. I can put like a ribbon mic on a channel, a 77, and put it on and record, and it's like, it just sounds good.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, because ribbons also have that. A lot of times seem like they have that quality, and it's good to be reminded that like it's all the components in the signal chain that might be giving us, you know, a different sound out of something too.
So I'm excited about that, being like, okay, I'm going to get to do some couple times a year now, probably do selective album projects and have the space to work out of. Or if I feel like, let me just see what it sounds like if I go and pop some stems on this Neve board, right? I get close to a song and I just kind of like, maybe it needs to be put onto analog tape. Let's go dump the drums from the song onto tape and back in and see what it sounds like.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
What are you excited about sonically? Like what sort of production techniques are you thinking? I mean, you just named one, but like, are there new ways of recording that you'd like to experiment with? You know, new ways of micing up a band or capturing sounds?
I would like to do more. That's another thing I kind of want to put this signal out into the universe by just speaking it out loud. I kind of believe, and even though I'm not a real religious person, I believe that there is something about a larger picture of the universe of energy that we don't have understanding of, that we don't have control over, that when you voice something that it kind of pushes itself out in the universe. Even if you think it might. That's why if you think too many negative thoughts, negative things start to happen to you in your life. Like that's been proven. True. So what I would like to do is I'd like to do some like live to 2-track shit in that room.
I love doing live to 2-track.
Yeah, like take that ATR 102 they have, 1/2-inch 2-track machine. And like do a safety like feed to like a 2-track into Pro Tools, but not do any not be like, oh, we got a safety just in case. Like, no, we're fucking doing it. We have a digital 2-track and we have the analog 2-track. We're going to do 96K and analog, and we're going to do it. And then we're going to also do a playback head dump back into Pro Tools in real time. Have all
now feeding. Headphones or no headphones?
No headphones. If they're the kind of band that can do that, right?
Yeah.
So I have one band. There's this one local jazz, like kind of improv jazz band that's really good. They're like funky. It's just bonkers good. Like they're so good. The drummer is just like ridiculous. Like it's like Detroit has some musicians who are bonkers. Like this guy, you watch him play and you're like, what the fuck? Like he's young. He's like 23 and he's just fucking phenomenal. Like. So I reached out to them saying like, hey, I want to do some stuff with you guys. So but I didn't want to like bring them in and like, oh, the studio's kind of half working. Like I want to be like, you guys come in, we're going to do a live to 2-track. Maybe you bring a couple friends to create an audience vibe. So you have a couple friends who are going to be hollering, hooting, like saying, yeah. Because when you see people play live, they play differently when they have an audience versus like playing for themselves. Right.
Yeah, so, totally.
Yeah. So like, I'd like to do it where we do one session. The first time I do it where it's kind of like limited audience of only friends they know, peers or whatever, or just family members, and just set it up, do it, and then see how it works out. And then if it's an established thing that sounds good and works, then I can say, okay, now let's start talking to everyone else in town who likes to do this and try to create kind of like a tiny radio.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe thing.
Maybe get some cameras in there and start a new show.
That was they already have all this stuff. This is not a problem to get. This is a full infrastructure production company that Joel runs, all kinds. So that's not a problem. But I wanted to just try out the musical side of it first to see how to set it up. Maybe we need to move the board even. So maybe we need more space, right? Like get a sense of things. And so that's kind of the idea I have, but it's just a matter of seeing it through. And I have like everything, I take on too much work. And so I have all these mixing projects to get done. So what I've decided is like right around anything, I'm booked out until about April right now. Is anything that comes to my way and be like, all right, I'm taking 2 weeks of March or 2 weeks of April and then 2 weeks of the next month, 2 weeks a month where I'm not doing anything. And I'm going to dedicate time to trying to get that more dialed in.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is, because these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. That's going to be exciting, man. That should be a lot of fun. And I've done a bunch of live to 2-track stuff, and I've always loved the way it sounds.
Oh,
there's a sonic purity to that too.
It forces you just to kind of like, you gotta think differently about the way you mic. You can't put like 1,000 mics on stuff. You have to just put just a couple of different mics and just choose how they're positioned, how the musicians are positioned with each other, and just figure out how to. Even if you got to put a little bit of a gobo between maybe the drummer's a little bit more playful and loud, you got to maybe dampen that a little bit by putting a gobo just a little bit, like a half gobo or just enough to like chill it a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the idea is to me, it's more about doing something that isn't typically being done in studios. Have a studio controlled environment and try to create a space where that is capable, because this room sounds really good. This room is very good sounding as a live room kind of scenario. It's big, tall ceilings. It's a decent sized room that it sounds really good in there. That whole wall of tapes and all that stuff, it creates this like very diffused environment that just sounds really good. It's real warm, but it's still lively, and it's surprisingly good sounding for the least amount of treatments that I've ever seen in a room. It has no treatments in a room, actually. It's just straight up the room. So I want to put a couple more diffusion panels in places to do a little more breakup. That's the next tier before doing this. Is I want to do a couple more acoustic treatment things in the room, and then
that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So let me. We're coming to the end here, but let me ask you a couple of fun questions. So one of the things that you have done repeatedly on this show is you've hipped us to some cool new plugins you've been trying out, because you're so often in that mix world. You're thinking about it. What comes to mind for you? Anything you want to give a shout out to that you've started playing around with or using plugin wise in your mixing process?
Well, basically everything that Safari Pedals makes.
Okay, awesome.
Like everything they make is bonkers. It's all cool. It all does something that no other plugin is doing. The Time Machine is like instantly like, oh, put that on something, instantly just allows you to change the tonal shape of it. Some of the new UAD stuff is really great. That new vocal channel strip is really good. Like, give shout out to my UAD peeps. Like, that vocal strip is just really good. Like, you can do tuning with it and stuff. I don't really use it in that way, but like the saturation and the tonality stuff and the compression and the de-esser it's just really good sounding quickly. Just like, wow, this is great. Like, that thing's great. That tape, that new retro tape emulate thing called, what's it called? The Verve Analog Machines is really great. I've been loving that a lot. I've been using that a lot. And actually this other one by Melda, or no, Chow is Chow something tape. It's this company called Chow Tape. Let me check it out. Pop that up. This thing is actually really, really good. It's a very subtle sound. Like, it's not Chow Tape model. It's part of cool. It might be free actually. Chow DSP. CHOW DSP. I think it's a free plugin actually. And it's actually like crazy good. Like, it's like this thing where you put it on something. It's that thing what you expect from tape. It's like a subtle change. And depending on how much you bias it and play with the settings, you can get it to be like surprisingly like more tape like that thing that happens with tape, right? Like, there's something that happens.
Well, and way back you hipped us to the Sketch cassette too, when you want to do the opposite of that, when you want to totally change the sound.
Yeah. I love Sketch cassette. That gets used a lot. The Audio Punks stuff, the Audio Punks Telefunken Spring, the Audio Punks. I've been really using the Audio Punks Spectrasonic 610 comp limiter that they put out. That plugin is like, I've been putting it on my mix bus, like in that technique where you're just using just the peak limiter, that crazy fast peak limiter. I figured out a way of setting you set the input and output gain to where you're not changing the level of it. It's just, you see that little yellow light going on a little bit. I've been using that in mix bus, and it's like really great. I've been using it on vocals. I've been using it on bass. I've been using it on snare drum and all kinds of places. And it's like kind of like dangerous because I'm like, oh, let's put that on there. And I'm just doing that thing where I'm like, I'm putting it on everything. That thing
That's cool, man.
That is like kind of the, it's really hard not to use that. That thing is really great.
That's cool. That gives us plenty to just go start exploring now. So thanks for going through that, because every time you've hit me to a plugin, I've ended up, getting it and using it.
And there's one more I wanted to talk about.
Okay, go ahead.
That I find a very useful one is the Louder Than Liftoff, the LTL Silver Bullet MK2. You know what I'm talking about?
Not yet.
Plugin Alliance makes. Isotope, whoever owns it now, is like whatever you want to call it. It's made by Louder Than Liftoff, but it's licensed through the Plugin Alliance website or through Native Instruments app. All sells the same. This Louder Than Liftoff master bus processor is kind of crazy. Like, it's really like, and you had I listened to one of your other podcast interview of one of your previous guests about a month ago.
Was talking about LTL.
Yeah, LTL Loud, the Silver Bullet MK2. It really, like, it was because of that podcast. I'm like, let me check that out. I always love mixed bus processors that are trying a different thing. And I demoed it, and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, it's one of those things where, like, you put it on the mix and then you bypass it, and you're like, oh, God damn it. It's like doing that. It's like, you're like, oh, fuck. It's the same thing as that compressor that UAD put out, the Capital mastering compressor. There's another one where, like, having it on and not even doing anything and just having it set up a certain way and turning it on and off, you're just like, fuck me. Like, it's like not level changing, but it's like the mix goes like it gets wider and things pop out more. All the energy that's happening in the guitars and all the different things that are happening in the mid range become better sounding. It's like that. One of those things where it's like, oh man. Yeah.
That's cool. That's fun when you start messing around with those and just, see how you can level up your mix. Now, you also, of course, do the mixing, both the pre-master version, which doesn't have the limiter, but then you do the loud version that goes to clients. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I remember learning from you on our mixing mastermind weekend was the idea of using a limiter that has low latency so that you can monitor through it, but you're not sort of like increasing the difference between when you do something with automation or whatever on the screen and when you hear it,
Yeah, it really depends on, like, I'm got a little more loose about that depending on what's going on in the mix. And like, if I'm trying to do like actual fader rides, then often what I'm doing now to get the latency down is I'm choosing that limiter to be the lowest latency thing and making sure I'm not adding anything on the mix bus that is adding too much latency, like a processor that isn't like heavy-handed and putting a bunch of latency on it. And then I'll freeze all my multi-track, anywhere there's multi-track audio, it gets frozen, just so that I reduce the chance of anything adding latency. So I try to get it down to less than 40 milliseconds or less, so that, like, if I am doing any fader rides, it's not 40 milliseconds is a lot, but and I set my buffer settings as low as I can. Now with the newer computers, you can do that. It's like it can handle having very low buffer settings without the computer going like, oh, what are you doing to me? It's like, you can set your mix at 128 and it's like, yeah, whatever. Like, who cares?
The computer, the original stutter edit.
Yeah, exactly. So
when your buffer was too low and it's like,
sometimes I just bypass the brick wall limiter for those fader rides moments. Sometimes if it's not a big deal to do that, because the difference isn't big sonically what I'm doing. Just the limiter is just there to bring the level up. So it is making a difference sonically, but it isn't needed for the fader ride. It's like sometimes we'll just, hard bypass that or inactivate it so I can do the fader ride. So, but often I'm trying to choose limiters that are working musically in the context. So sometimes just the Pro limiter that Pro Tools has is perfect for it. That's a very low latency one. That's the one I typically start with. If I find it's getting too crunchy or it's not the right one, I'll try the Pro L2 next. my fab filter to see how that's working. Sometimes I'll go and try sometimes it's the DMG limitless. It does its own.
Yeah, that's one that I got after our
I like that
weekend.
one a lot. It's really great for a certain kind of sound. It's really good at giving you this thing that other things can't.
Cool.
Yeah, I try stuff, but I'm always listening through a limiter because it's informing my compression of everything else, and it allows me to have a more transient mix because I'm not trying to achieve that loudness with all the mixing things. Like, the loudness is already happening, so then I can just focus on how is the transient and the low end happening. Is it getting through a limiter? Like, is all the shaping I'm doing making it through 6 dB of limiting, right? 6 or 7 dB of limiting is happening. Is the low end still punchy sounding after even though the limiter is going like this? So if it is still punchy sounding, then I'm doing a good job because it's going to get that by some mastering person anyways. It's rare that the A&R or whoever it is, the label, whoever isn't going to the mastering guy like, can we get it louder? That's rare. Like almost never happens now. It's usually always like, can we get it louder? So I'm just trying to work into a limiter, knowing that that's going to be the conversation at the end anyways. So I can shape it so that when that does start to happen, the low end doesn't just fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you again for being on Recording Studio Rockstars with us. What a blast.
Thank you.
Rockstars, let us know again in the comments if you want us to do either another Mixing Mastermind weekend with Collin. We could do it here at my studio in Nashville. Maybe we'd do it up in Detroit one of these days. And then let the Rockstars know where they can go find out more about you. Where would you like them to connect with you? What if they've got a killer project that they need to take across the finish line?
I mean, my website's the best place because I have a contact page. You can either reach me there and just ask me a question. I have 2 different contact forms. One that is just to ask me a question. So when I get that, it comes in to a different email address and I can just answer to it. And then we can have a conversation and you don't have to jump through all the loops. The other one form has all of the, what's the project name, blah, blah, blah. Do you have a due date? Things like that. So that so when I get that email, I go, they want to possibly hire me, and then we can have a conversation. And I already know that's what the goal is. And I'm being fed information like links to rough mixes, maybe even a link to download the Pro Tools session or Logic session or WAV file so I can look at them. And we can easily have a back and forth dialogue in a professional way. And it's not this thing where I'm like, I don't know. You want to hire me? Like, am I the right person? I don't know. What is your project? Right? Give me more information.
Get the information up front.
Yeah, get it right up front. I can get into it and understand. Because I recently got a project that came to me and they were like, we want you to mix this. Is it ready? And I got it. And it was very demo state still. I was like, you just need spend more time in this. Like you haven't, you don't want to pay me to do something that's not ready to be mixed. So, and they were like, oh, thank you very much. I'm like, cool. Thank you. I don't mind taking the time for 5 minutes and opening up some Pro Tools session or Logic session and listening to it. It's not that much big of a deal to do that.
So Rockstars, again, I can attest to having worked with Collin. The sound comes back and it is exciting. So if you want your record to sound really amazing and you want to work with somebody, give them a shout. Thanks again for joining us. Yep. Rockstars, thank you so much for watching. Remember to kick that like button, subscribe to the channel so that you get more of these interviews from us here. And Collin, my brother, I look forward to seeing you around the studio again soon, man.
I might be down there soon in Nashville anyways, because there's a studio I've been working on designing of that I have to be there for overseeing of a certain construction point that needs to be guided to make sure the contractors aren't just going like, oh, we do whatever we want. It's like,
cool,
no,
man.
you got to do it like this.
Well, give me a shout when you're here, man, and we'll connect for sure.
All right.
And again, man, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our awesome sponsors who help make this episode possible: iZotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, and SAE Institute. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon codes at iZotope.com and nativeinstruments.com. Use the coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off any plug-in purchase. And don't forget, you can start mixing right now with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. If you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors using the links in the show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They're going to help you make your best record ever. Also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way for you to help support this show. I'd also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars, Vlad Weselchenko and Liz Hulitskaya. Thanks so much for watching and listening, Rockstars. We'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.